I am Brother Cornell West.
This is Chris Hedges.
I'm Rosa Clemente.
Hey, what's up? This is Chuck D, Public Enemy, Prophets of Rage.
And this is Newsbeat.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Check 1, 2 in the place to be. Once again, This Week in Social Justice, live and direct, streaming live Fridays, 1 p.m. on your favorite YouTube channel in the world, the U.S. Newsbeat YouTube channel, also on Facebook. And this week, Twitch. We've added Twitch to our repertoire. You can find us on Twitch TV/US Newsbeat. You might be listening on the podcast as well. We take these Friday episodes that are done live and we repackage them, repurpose them, as it were, for the podcast feed. Newsbeat, 2 words, 1 love. As we're here doing This Week in Social Justice, it is I, Manny Faces, your host and producer and conductor of this wild train. And joining me, as always, my good friends and comrades, the editor-in-chief of Newsbeat, Christopher Towarski, and the managing editor of Newsbeat, Rashed Mian. Gentlemen, start your E-engines.
What's up, Manny?
Hi.
What's up, Beard?
What's going on?
Beard.
What
Rashed.
do you mean?
You're looking all woolly.
What do you mean?
Better make sure
This
that
thing's been here for. It's been here since the quarantine. You haven't seen me?
I don't know. You got a new camera or something, man. You're looking.
It looks fuller.
It's the new
It looks-
camera.
You better make sure that hair dye doesn't drip down your face in the middle of this show, my friend. So, my friends, we are here again this week at Social Justice. So, to all commenters, we see you and we love you. And during the show, we will ask you some questions and have you interact with us. So, please do not be afraid. Do not be shy. Enter your comments in the comment section of whatever it is you're watching us on. And actually, it's nice to know that you're paying attention. So, that's great. I appreciate that a lot. Please do that. And then, of course, we will be asking you a question of the day. Let's start with that.
Yeah.
So part of what we do is we ask you to interact with the question. This is something that's in the news. It's a very nuanced issue. It has social justice undertones, and it may be a yes or no question to you, but there may be a yes but. So please put your yes buts in the comment section. Let us know what you think. Should the Biden administration cancel all student debt? Now, it's been talked about. It's a thing. It may be a thing. What are your thoughts? Leave them in the comment section. We'll return to this a few times during the show, and once again, we'll share your comments. I do believe we actually, I wanted to highlight it, and I didn't get a chance in time because we also got a comment on YouTube on our last week's episode where we talked to Marcus Farrell, who was the former deputy campaign manager for Stacey Abrams, right? Big dog and crew down there in Atlanta who helped flip the state blue. And we had him on mere moments after actually Georgia was called for Joe Biden. And the name of the episode or that segment was, why Georgia turned blue. And one of the commenters yelled at us and said, because it was rigged, because it was rigged. That's how.
That's how. That's even though it was just certified by Georgia.
It's all good. Once you get troll comments,
yeah,
you're on your way. So shouts to you, troll. We appreciate you.
I mean, the press conference at the Four Seasons that week sort of cleared things up, though. I thought so.
They make a compelling
I think it resolved
case.
Everything.
They make a compelling case. So once again, we are a podcast dressed up as a live stream. So please understand that we encourage you to listen to Newsbeat the podcast. It's an award-winning podcast. It merges social justice journalism with high-level journalism, interviews with activists, experts, people on the field, people on the ground, people being affected by a lot of these issues. We mix and merge and meld and mold that together with music very often. That's the beat in Newsbeat. And we often, although more so pre-COVID, would invite independent hip-hop artists to construct original verses that would complement the issue. So it's sort of like, we like to say, it's like Democracy Now! And Black Thought had a podcast, baby. So if you're watching on the live stream and that sounds intriguing, we're going to actually play some clips from the show for the podcast during the show. So stay tuned for that. And if you already know us, if you're already listening on the podcast feed, swing on over to the live stream every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern, which is what we're doing right now. We have some guests today. We have one very incredible guest coming up very soon. Rashed, you want to tee that one up and I'll show the peoples?
Yeah, sure. So first one up today is Fenaba Addo. She's an associate professor of consumer science at the University of Wisconsin. And Fenaba is going to be on to talk about student loan debt in this country, and that's the question of the day. Do you think the Biden administration should cancel all student loan debt? She's going to talk about that, but also the racial inequalities involved in student loan debt, and basically how this, just the piling on of this debt actually fuels racial inequality in this country. So that should be an interesting conversation.
Oh, super dope.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. After that, Chris, we're working to get a guest. We may not get a guest, but we have a great topic that is going to be interesting after that.
Yeah, and we're just playing around with different
formats,
structures for the show, and we thought it would be good to maybe have a discussion, a couple-minute discussion amongst ourselves. Today is the United Nations deems it World Children's Day, and they released a pretty insightful analysis of how children are faring in the wake of COVID, and we thought it was incredibly important. And
we're gonna talk about that in depth after in the second segment or so.
Yep.
All right, great. So that being said, we have given you the question of the day, right? So please make sure you handle that. And now let's talk about what we get into at the beginning of the show. Some very quick news beat bites. News beat bites are just small, interesting pieces of news that have come up in the social justice world that you may not hear about in mainstream media, or because you don't hear about a lot of these things in mainstream media, I guess, right? They're preoccupied with some other things right now. So let's go and kick it off. Rashed, you are first, sir. Let's go.
Sure. So I'm going to be that guy that does two, even though we're supposed to do one. Even we have rigid rules here this week in social justice, but I'm going to break them today. Okay. So first up, this is an issue that I try to follow a lot, and it has to do with the number of women in jails in this country. It's something that I think is obscured when we talk about mass incarceration, because a lot of the discussion is to talk about men in jails and prison. But over the course of the last 30 years, especially since the war on drugs and the tough on crime era of politics in this country, the number of women in prisons and jails has soared exponentially. Throughout, especially the last 35 years, I think the number of women has risen 25%. Meanwhile, the number of men has went down 33%, which is obviously good.
We're showing the chart from the prison policy site, by the way.
Yeah, there you go. So you'll see in the 1990s. I mean, at one point in the 1970s, there was just a few counties across America that had women in jails, and now it's about 75% of counties in America have women in jail. So that is just explosive growth, and a lot of the arrests have to do. If you take a look at the Vera Institute, they did a really helpful report on this, and a lot of the incarceration has to do with the war on drugs and some minor crimes. And I think there's a tremendous stat that shows nearly 80% of the women in jails are mothers, which just tells you about the collateral consequences of locking up so many women. Right. And secondly, this is now, just forgive me, because this is a story that just came on my radar today. And
I'll forgive you.
This is from appreciate it. This is from the Tampa Bay Times, and I will throw it in the comment section so people could check it out.
Yep.
But this is an unbelievable story. So the Tampa Bay Times did an investigation, and they found that the sheriff's department was using grades and abuse histories to label school children, quote, potential criminals. So like I said, I just got this. I'm going to read briefly from the story, but it says the Pasco Sheriff's Office keeps a secret list of kids it thinks could fall into a life of crime based on factors like whether they've been abused or gotten a D or an F in school. So that's according to the agency's internal intelligence manual. So it's basically, police surveilling kids who are not criminals right now, but who they're, I guess, projecting to potentially be criminals based on their grades and other factors that have to do with what's going on in their household. And so I definitely encourage everybody to check out this investigation from the Tampa Bay Times. And like I said, we'll throw a link in the comment section for you.
Yep, indeed. Just did. Okay. Wow. Deep. The scarlet letter of sorts. Okay. Following that, my turn. I have something that's not so newsy, but it's still newsworthy, I think. I came across this Instagram. This just today. I just came across it, so I didn't get too deep into it. There's an Instagram account called Data for Black Lives, and what I noticed them. I'm not sure where I came across it, but really fascinating because they every Wednesday are now going to be having what they call crash course, as you can see on the screen. And I'm working two screens here, so bear with me. And what this is every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern, they'll be teaching a new data or justice concept on their Twitter and on their IGTV. I always found it fascinating how important data is, or data, depending on how you pronounce it or what Star Trek fan you are. But fascinating the connection between data, numbers, and trends in social justice, all the things that we talk about, as we just talked about in your story. The numbers, as the inimitable Sean Carter once said, men lie, women lie, numbers don't. So I found it very fascinating that these folks are putting together a crash course in data for social justice. It may just be a starting off point for somebody, but it may be inspiring to somebody else. I thought it was fascinating. I'm not so gooder at numbers. I don't do maths well, but it's a very fascinating topic to me, and so I wanted to pass it along. Christopher?
Yeah, so the FBI released its annual hate crimes report this week, and surprise, surprise, hate-motivated crimes were up, but worse than that, it was the highest level in more than a decade last year, and hate-motivated murders climbed to a record 51 deaths, including the 23 people who were killed in the Walmart in El Paso last year. Hate crimes have been increasing in the U.S. almost every year since 2014, and these are actually underreported figures.
Right.
And the most recent stats show that the majority of these crimes were committed by whites, and domestic right-wing terror has been a growing threat on local law enforcement agencies' radar for years.
Right.
Yet it's always obviously disproportionately Islamic extremism that are on the lips of government officials,
or Antifa, or
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I thought this would be good to play a clip of our previous episode we did back in 2017 on this, misunderstanding terrorism, exposing racial Caucasian extremism.
Yes. Radical Caucasian extremism. Yeah. So there isn't a topic that comes up now that we haven't been focused on for a few years now. And again, we are a podcast masquerading as a live stream, but a clip from the episode Radical Caucasian Extremism, which I thought I had here, and I do, so that you understand that we make some stuff that is worthy of your time. Check out this clip from our 2017 episode, breaking it all down.
Let me give you an example of one of the most frightening extremists you've probably never heard of. If you look him up, Eric Charles Smith is a white supremacist in Pittsburgh who had built 20 improvised explosive devices, pipe bombs, and had them in his home. Authorities only found out about it because he was abusive towards his girlfriend. She called the police to get a restraining order. They came in and found all of these bombs lying around. And also white supremacist literature suggesting, and a podium suggesting that this apartment was the meeting place for a white supremacist organization. That's frightening. That was only local news in the Pittsburgh area and has since dropped out of sight. I suspect that 20 pipe bombs locked and loaded would be much greater news if he had been Muslim.
The hands of time couldn't untie these thoughts that intertwine in my mind as we rise, watching the tides collide. Affirmative action and class action suits will suit you fine. Instead of working on your own, getting a job like mine. Got the left-wing commies conversing on their purposes. Women, Jews, gays, hijab wearers in their turbans. It's everybody you see, every category. America is inclusive to everybody but me. But what about me? I worked 3 jobs to get through college. Wasn't less fortunate, so couldn't get a scholarship. For straight white middle class, the world has a coup. Can't even smack a piece of ass with without hearing me too? Can a tax-paying man have a beer and watch the Patriots without somebody kneeling to my flag degrading it? I've been stopped by the cops, but all lives matter. I'm alive cause I respect the law and treat them with manners. You should learn it, you deserve it. You're so worthless, so is Curtis. Won't be treated second class to a first-rate servant. When election day comes, I'm voting for Trump. I push you back in your place before you replace us.
Our counterterrorism efforts in the
Shouts to Liquid, our artist in residence, who just it's like an ironic artwork. I can't imagine. I can't figure how Liquid put that together, but
Supremely talented.
Our artist in residence, Liquid, appeared on that. Also voices in that episode, as you can see on the screen, Charles Kurzman, professor of sociology at UNC Chapel Hill, Mehdi Hassan on that episode, and Sammy Rangel and Tony McAleer, who were former white supremacists that lead an organization to try and reform and unradicalize.
Yeah. Life After Hate, I think it's called.
Life After Hate. So great episode. Shouts to Liquid. Brilliant personification of the issue, I think, or the mentality that drives a lot of this stuff. So that's that. That's where we're at. That was our News Beat Bites. Now, as promised, we have a guest. And as promised, they're here. It's always nice when that happens. So right. if you would, Rashed, please help us welcome our guest.
Hi, Fenaba. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Great. So, Fenaba, I want to get right into it. Now, this is a study that an issue that you've studied before, and so can you just talk to viewers about how student loan debt contributes to the racial wealth gap in this country?
Sure. So yeah, like as you said, I've been studying this for quite some time since I was in graduate school, studying the rise of student loan debt from before the Great Recession all the way through the Great Recession and continuing afterwards. And I've tied that work to the racial wealth gap and racial wealth inequality, and really trying to unpack or show how historical legacies of racial wealth inequality have fed into rising racial debt disparities. So the accumulation of debt, in particular among Black borrowers, and how that debt disparity fits into the wealth gap for the young adults, for those children. So it's both in the accumulation and the repayment piece. And so in this work, we show that because Black students and their families have lower wealth, they can't pay for college, obviously, or they have less resources to draw upon to help their students and their children to attend college, and have to turn to the credit markets in order to afford the expensive educations. And I really want to emphasize, in this moment in which a college degree remains one of the strongest predictors of social mobility and economic and financial security. So they're not making an irrational choice, right, to do this. So I really want to emphasize that point, that taking on this debt is a financial risk, but they're doing so because they're betting on the returns of the college degree and the college education.
And Professor, recently there's been more and more talk about potential forgiving of student debt by the Biden administration through an executive order. And I'm just wondering, your thoughts on that and potential impacts, especially maybe if it's potentially modeled after Senator Warren's proposal.
Yeah, so the difference is there. So I'll start off by answering your first question, which is I am in support of debt cancellation. I think these students and their families were preyed upon, and we can do better. And I think the difference in the Biden versus the Warren plan is just how much are they looking at to cancel for students and their families. The Biden plan is a little bit more conservative. It's about $10,000, or that's what he's expressed, whereas the Warren plan is saying that we need about $50,000. And she's made the argument or made the case that if we look at the facts and figures with regard to wealth inequality within our society and who has the disproportionate burden of student loan debt, a larger amount will help to close that wealth gap. So that's the difference in those two plans. But I think that yes, yes, a larger amount would help Black borrowers, but I think even the lower amounts will help a majority of people who are struggling, because if you look at how the distribution of debt, most borrowers have about, so let me say, a concentration of the borrowers have less than $10,000 amount of debt. So yeah.
Great.
Did that answer your question? I'm
Yeah.
making sure I'm covering all the
definitely.
bases.
Yeah, definitely. And just on the note of the racial wealth gap, so we've also seen studies that show that Black Americans with college degrees ultimately earn less than their white counterparts with high school degrees. So can you talk about the impact this has on Black Americans satisfying their student debt obligations, and then obviously becoming successful financially?
Yeah. So this is the crux of like racial stratification within our society. I will say that I think the stat or the study that you're referencing is actually with regard to wealth. So Black college graduates tend to have less median net wealth than white high school, whites who have not finished their high school, have less than a high school degree. What this means is that that there are other, frictions that feed into Black students and Black college graduates' ability to accumulate wealth within our society. And if we're looking explicitly at like the labor market, we still know that there's existence of discrimination within, wage discrimination that is directly impacting their ability, if they have a lot of debt, to pay back those debts as fast. So in some of the research that we've done, we find that the debt gap actually increases across the young adult period. And this is largely because white borrowers are able to pay back their loans faster. And especially in those like critical periods in the early years when a lot of Black borrowers are defaulting on their loans. So this has, real implications, because presumably this is when these young adults are transitioning from school into the labor market. And if they have difficulty finding jobs that can pay them a fair wage or a comparable wage, or that has wage growth, then they're going to struggle to pay back those loans. And we know those loans are very hard to discharge in bankruptcy. Right now, it's almost impossible to discharge those loans. And so this it becomes this, this weight that they carry with them throughout their adulthood, not just, a 10-year period, but it becomes 15, it becomes 20, it's 25. And that's where we are now. That's what we're seeing.
Right. And Fenaba, we just have about 2 minutes left. So I have one last question for you. And I think what we often lose perspective here and context. Can you just give viewers just a really brief history of just the sort of the genesis of student loans in this country, how it was part of this idea that public education is a public good. And it was never meant to make the government profit, right, off of the backs of Americans going to college, right?
Right. And to increase access to people or increase access to a larger population or demographic of people. But what we've really seen is a shift in the populations who are going to college during the, I should say, let me go back, a shift in the population. So more people are gaining access to higher education at a time in which the costs are being shifted into the students and their families, right? So if you go back to the early origins of it, yes, you hear those stories about, I went to school and it was only, $2,000 and I worked after and I paid it off quickly, right? That's because a lot of those fees were being subsidized by the federal and state and local governments, right? So you didn't bear the burden of those costs. But what has happened over time is that higher ed has become, the budget item that gets cut when states have to readjust their budgets. And so in order to keep accepting families, accepting students, and because of this loan program, they have shifted the cost or the share of the cost onto students and their families. And so at a time in which as I said, like when I started, it's become increasingly more crucial to have a college degree.
Great. Well, Fenaba, we really appreciate you coming on and giving us your insights. Obviously, this is an important topic in a moment of time where we're in another recession and it's going to be tough out there. So we really appreciate you joining us for this discussion.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Fenaba, before you go, you might have heard as we were bringing you in, the fact that we blend art and hip hop, especially with social justice.
I love it.
Shouts to some of the University of Wisconsin, the hip hop in the heartland.
Oh, okay.
Folks, there's some folks in the college system out by you that do a lot of integrating hip hop with education. So just wanted to shout out your colleagues.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time.
Yes,
Appreciate you.
absolutely.
Take care.
Take care.
All right, gentlemen.
Yeah, it's good. Always good to add some context to these discussions, because I don't think a lot of people hear these things. You see these things, cancel student debt, and everybody's like, well, that's not fair.
Yeah, of course. Well, right. Exactly. Hey, listen, I got some debt, but it's a nuanced issue.
Yeah, definitely.
Some people have answered. Sage says, yes, please. Cancel the debt. Yes, please.
I think that would be the overwhelming majority of.
And shouts to Michael Doggett. Hey, another hip hop, an educator who blends hip hop into his classroom. We have a nice conversation coming up on my other podcast, Hip Hop Can Save America. Stay tuned for that. Michael Doggett says, yes, but something needs to be done about the system as a whole. Free public colleges should be a goal.
Yeah,
I would
agree
to that as well.
It's deeper than just the student loan.
Indeed. Well, shouts to Fenaba for joining us, giving us some context. Again, like you said, it's always better to learn about these things from your friendly neighborhood newsbeat folk who go into these topics. When other places, you got to dig for some of this stuff. We do the digging, and we put the dirt on your plate. I got to work on my analogies. Okay, so look.
Yeah, this is the second straight week where you've had an analogy just go down.
I am the king of bad analogies. How about that? So yes. So again, question of the day. Please leave your comments, your responses in the comment section. We would love to have you contribute to the show. It's like a game. Don't forget, we are a podcast, and we expect that you would listen to our podcast. Newsbeat, wherever you find podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, anywhere, really. Newsbeat, 2 words. You see the logo. A social justice podcast that merges high-level social justice journalism about the topics that you hear us talking about here with music and very often original contributions from brilliant independent hip-hop artists. Shouts to Liquid. Shouts to also Mr. Silent Night, our other artist in residence who checked in on the check-in. So peace and love to our artist friends that we're trying to work back into the mix as the coronavirus keeps us apart, sadly. But we will be back. Matter of fact, we do have an episode coming up that brings back an artist and is a really dope collaboration with a really big organization. So you should
set your alerts. Spotify finally lets you get an alert when you get a podcast.
Still doesn't work for me. Still doesn't work for me. With that said, shouts to our sponsor, our parent family, Maury Creative Studios, a New York-based HubSpot Diamond Solutions partner. That means, for people who don't know, a digital marketing agency that helps you with sales enablement and setting up your marketing and doing your website and doing your blogging and doing all the things that make your medium to large size business go from good to great, and do it while growing for good. You see that the idea behind the company is to not only profit, but profit by possibly giving back to the world. Isn't that a nice concept? What a novel idea.
We need that more than ever now.
So shouts to them, MauryCreative.com. Swing on over to them if you have a company that fits that bill. And of course, you can listen for kind of an idea of the vibe. Go to Grow for Good podcast. CEO of Maury Creative Studios, Jed Maury, has a fantastic first season of Grow for Good, which interviews CEOs and other business leaders that do well by doing good. Those are it's our parent company, but it's our parent family. We've been rocking with them for a long time. So shouts to them. Tee up the episode again as a podcast, and this leads into their next conversation. We'll explain why we may or may not have a guest, but the conversation is no less important. It has to do with childhood mortality rates, COVID-19, coronavirus, poverty, all these things coming together. And again, as a podcast, there's nothing that's happening today in the social justice landscape that we haven't touched or delved into at some point. And with that, please tee up our episode spotlight of the week. I'm finding
Yeah, this is Chris, you want to take this one?
Yeah, and Manny, as you mentioned, I mean, representatives from UNICEF and Save the Children both have links to join us. They were trying to work something out. They may, during our discussion here, or may not. But regardless, we felt it was important. Today is World Children's Day, that the United Nations designated to shine a spotlight and highlight issues affecting children across the globe, not just in the United States. And we felt, a very underreported aspect of COVID has been its effect on children. And especially here, I mean, if you listen to the president or you read any of his tweets, throughout the past couple of months, he'll say, COVID doesn't affect children. It only affects the elderly. Only the people with pre-existing conditions are really the ones at risk, which may be true in terms of, yes, if someone, an elderly person has underlying conditions and they get COVID, they're more likely to pass away.
Right.
But groups like Save the Children, groups like UNICEF have done enormous research into it. And, when we were looking into this, just some stats were just absolutely, just mind-blowing, just devastating. And we felt we need to highlight some of this stuff. So in commemoration of World Children's Day, UNICEF put out a report. It's called Averting a Lost COVID Generation. And it suggests, a 6-point plan to respond to this. And, some of the findings of this report, are that as of this month, 11% of COVID infections are children and adolescents under 20. Obviously, that's not something you hear a lot about. 11%. Right. That's a lot of kids.
Right.
Right. And while children may not be the sort of the face of the virus, a lot of the sort of collateral damage falls on them, right? Because you have because of COVID, you have increasing families who are being pushed into poverty globally and here in the United States. You have, obviously, with the lockdowns with education, you have children who are being deprived of that. You have increased violence, unfortunately, when everyone's sort of stuck at home and not in school. So there's a lot of hidden tolls.
Interesting.
On children.
Yeah.
And, just some of these figures, I think that, the more I talked in the past couple of days to just coworkers and people I know about some of these numbers I came across, I think the more I realized that, yes, I think we all sort of know that children are dying, every day in this world. But I think whether it's a defense mechanism or, there's just too much stuff going on right now to really concentrate on. I think it's important, at least, on a day like today, to just look at these numbers and recognize, because if you just sort of walk around and with that acknowledgement, yes, children are dying. Okay. Let me just continue. And you don't, if everyone were to do that, how would that ever change?
I got to say, I don't even know that people are going that far. I don't think that people are thinking, yes, children died. Okay. But tie it into the coronavirus pandemic, because we get this thing where children brush off. It brushes them off, they recover, and it's all good. The concern is don't pass it to grandma, right? But this bigger picture, which was news to me when you first brought this up, was that, right, but if the coronavirus pandemic causes families to, like you say, fall into poverty, become evicted, January is going to be a whole another slew of evictions. It's a big thing to be talking about. That leads to bad health care. That leads to bad nutrition and food, and that could affect the lot. Yeah. Right, exactly. So it's more than just they're not going to get sick and die, but they could become sick and die as sort of a ancillary result of this collateral damage, if you will.
Yeah, and I think that it's our responsibility, as a society, overall. I mean, let alone just the social justice podcast, but to look this stuff in the eye, and as I said, there are bright spots, if you will. The child mortality rate globally has dropped for the past 5 years in a row. I think 2019, they were on track to, the largest percentage drop. But now COVID is sort of reversing that. And, the number for me that I think really, I just couldn't ignore it. And I talked to you guys and, again, with it being this commemoration day, 5.2 million children under the age of 5 died last year. Like, I just tried to step away and just try to, absorb that.
Right.
5.2 million. That was prior to COVID. And so, Manny, if you want to show that third link there, so here it is. Another 6,000 children under the age of 5 could die specifically because of COVID. And again, by acknowledging these things, by researching these things, by even knowing these facts, knowing these groups, it helps overall. It helps to bring down these numbers overall.
Right.
And again, it was on a downward trend. So I just thought we'd talk a little bit about this report and go through this report and, some of the hidden impacts, obviously, as I mentioned. So rising violence, increased poverty, mental health issues, which, gets mentioned here and there, but, children obviously are at their most developmental stages and, they're not getting that help. And now you have this isolation tossed in, you have, being separated from, their friends and students in school. It exacerbates these things. The loss of future employment, and again, we have COVID related long-term morbidity.
I'm looking at the, obviously, that's weird. School lunch. Yeah, it's a system. It's not me. But school lunches are. See what happens when we try to talk about the truth? They try to shut us down. School lunches. School meals being a reliable source of daily nutrition. This is interesting. As of April 14, over 117 million children in 37 countries may miss out on their measles vaccination as pandemic causes immunization campaigns to stop to reduce the risk of spreading the virus. So you got campaigns to, immunize, the word, children in a bunch of countries, not necessarily the United States, but maybe throughout the world, but maybe even here in the United States. And those programs are being kind of pushed aside because they don't want people to congregate or whatever the case may be. And now they may be susceptible to those diseases. It's all these little side things that could happen, this chain of events.
Yeah, I think this also shines a light on some of the things that we've talked about, from a social justice perspective, but also on past episodes where it shines a light on sort of the institutions inside this country, whether it's healthcare, whether it's a social safety net that allows people to get back on their feet and then thrive. We had a poverty episode where the head investigator from the United Nations came to America and described the conditions in some cities and states as that of a third world country. And this is the wealthiest nation in the globe. So I know this is what Chris is talking about. It's a global issue, but especially here in America, I think there should be ways in which we can tackle some of these crises, especially when we talk about, people, they talk about pro-life in a way where it's just focused on one particular issue, but we should, when we talk about that, we should, realize that there's a lot of things that go into a person's life, and we need to, resolve some of these so they don't fall into these deep holes.
And on that note, in that issue, and the most recent stats state that 1 in 6 children live in poverty in America. That's here. Nearly 12 million children live in poverty in the United States. We're already amid a child poverty crisis in the United States, and then, also the United States, for all its wealth and all its power, ranks among, the worst in infant mortality. maternal mortality. And all of these issues are disproportionately affecting, Black and brown communities. Nearly, another stat here, nearly 38.1 million people overall live in poverty within the United States.
Yeah. And just talking about the collateral issues that emerge from this, especially with the coronavirus, you think about all the kids who are not getting a full education because they can't be in schools and how that's impacting them. And obviously what we saw from the beginning of the quarantines across the country is just the disparate impact on kids who don't have access to technology or the internet, and how they're basically, once that happens, they're getting no education, or they're getting minimal learning, if that. So I think this is what Chris is saying, is it's so important, because it just all falls, it just all, hovers down, and then you can see all the issues just emerging out of this one big problem.
Yeah.
And Manny, if you want to just show the other group I mentioned was Save the Children. I think it's the fourth link.
Yep.
There, they put out a huge report as well, highlighting this, protecting a generation. And, again, just knowing that this crisis is out there, it's on the, it's fatal. It's tragic. Poverty is a social injustice. A child, 5.6 million or whatever children under the age of 5 dying in 2020, is a social injustice. And obviously there are myriad other social injustices that culminate in a figure like that.
Right.
But learning about it, going to these groups, reading some of these reports.
Yeah, you don't have to dig too deep. I mean, these reports are available. They're for public consumption. They're there's real deep analysis, but some of this stuff is very accessible, very easy to read about. And as we always talk about, or like to talk about, certainly on the podcast, is ways that people can help. And the way that you could actually help is, pay attention to some of these organizations that are doing the work. Decide if whether you want to be involved or, support, either financially or whatever the case may be. Very often, these organizations will have obviously ways that you can contribute. Plus, the episodes that we put out on these topics very often have the voices. Our guests are always from organizations that are doing kind of the work. Sometimes on a local level, sometimes on a national or international level as well.
Yeah, I think it's actually a perfect time, if you have it, Manny, if you could show the preview of the episode When Epidemics Collide, because I think that speaks to a lot of what we just talked about, how the coronavirus has, exposed deep inequities in our society.
Right, absolutely. I have that right here. As a matter of fact, let's check this out. This came out in the middle of the pandemic. We were covering this issue, and again, you're right. It's the perfect storm, if you will, of terribleness.
Yeah.
What we're seeing with this coronavirus is that it's tearing off the blinds of the inequality that was at the center and core of our society. The 140 million people who are poor, or one $400 emergency away from poverty. The 15 million families who can't afford water. Hundreds of cities and towns and states across the country. The 10 million to 12 million to a lot more million people who are homeless, despite the fact that there's actually more abandoned housing in this country than homeless people.
Tonight, they're the images alarming Californians. In LA, the homeless on places like the Hollywood Walk of Fame and along the iconic Venice Boardwalk.
Any and everywhere you go, in and out of stores, homeless.
What was once largely confined to the city's notorious Skid Row can now be seen all across Los Angeles. Hundreds of homeless encampments have sprung up, including this one in the shadow of City Hall.
The tens of millions of people without health care at all, and then the tens of millions more people on top of that who do have health care, but who can't afford the coverage that they have. The lack of living wages is 60.
There you go. When Epidemics Collide, Coronavirus, Criminal Justice, and Poverty. An artist-less episode, but no less artistic. You check that out in all of our full podcast episodes at Newsbeat, usnewsbeat.com/subscribe to sign up to your podcast. What it does is it makes the issues, I don't want to say bearable. It doesn't make them bearable at all, but it makes them a little bit more listenable and understandable. Our great voices, Liz Theo Harris on that, Reverend Liz Theo Harris from the Poor People's Campaign. Again, great guests, great insights. I don't know about these issues with the depth that I learn about them putting these episodes together. And in 20 or 30 minutes, you know, I used to say, you give us 20 minutes, we'll give you the world. Shouts to 10 wins. And you know, you give us 30 minutes and we'll break it down, these issues, and really give you some good insight that you won't find on your cable news network 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, Manny, if I may, you mentioned something a couple minutes ago about evictions and what's going to happen in January when these moratoriums come to an end in some states. And in that episode, we talked to somebody from a group called Eviction Lab, where they've tracked evictions throughout the country, but then obviously that became all the more important during the coronavirus pandemic. And yeah, that's Aliza Durana, who works for Eviction Lab. So I encourage everybody as we prepare for these just tragic potential evictions, and you're talking about thousands in this country, potentially as we go into 2021, check out Eviction Lab and see what they're doing, because it's going to put it all into perspective.
All right, shouts to Eviction Lab, evictionlab.something, I'm sure.
Things.org.
Let's do it live. We'll do it live. Evictionlab.org. There it is.
Yeah.
So shouts to that organization.
Maps and data, just tracking everything from the start of the pandemic. So
look at that. Look what we tell you guys about. Look what we do. We hand deliver. We cure. Don't you love a curated show that just tells you just pulls all the things and delivers it to you in a beautiful package? That's what we're here to do this week in social justice. So with that said, is that the end of that topic?
Yeah, I think, and just in terms of solutions, as you mentioned, go to UNICEF.org. Is that Tino?
That is Tino.
Go to UNICEF.org.
He has something to
go to SaveTheChildren.org.
Tino, go to the comments section, Tino. Put your comments in the comments section. You don't just interrupt the hosts. Please continue, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, that's, just learn more about this, and there's all different more information on there, and how to support the entire all these causes, and also locally get involved.
That's it. And if you can't do it financially, and something that we've said today maybe moves you, certainly the children's issue at large, evictions, student debt, there's places to go to volunteer your time, to volunteer your skill sets,
even just spreading the word. I mean,
I was going to say, share this video and say, hey, these guys are talking some stuff, man. I need to spread the word about this and let my people know about these issues, because we don't hear this being talked about in this kind of way. So if you appreciate what we're doing, we especially you, guy or girl or non-binary gender, who suggested that the Georgia election was rigged and trolled us on our YouTube account, comment. Thank you. We'll take you too. You can spread this and say, I hate these guys, but share it.
Yeah.
And that's how you got to do. Once again, the question is, should the Biden administration, Sage commenting, and one fabulous, insightful comment from Twitch. Hey.
Hi to you.
Hey. Great. When the bots come, you're blowing up, guys. So that all being said, let's move on real quick. We're coming to the end, and that means it is time for us we like to say, news beat the past, but the swishy thing says this week, but back then.
Yeah.
What are we talking about? What happened this week, but back then?
So two things. November 23rd, 1917, the U.S. Supreme Court struck down a Louisville, Kentucky ordinance requiring Black and white Americans to live in separate residential areas.
100 years ago.
Yep. And yesterday was the 157th anniversary of President Abraham Lincoln's delivery of the Gettysburg Address.
This guy.
And Manny, I think you know a little bit something about the Gettysburg Address, don't you?
I do. Just real quick, we shouted Silent Night out before. He's our artist in residence. We'd love to bring together the worlds of music, art, and social justice journalism. And of course, because Silent Night is a member of the band called Fuse, which has performed on 2 of our extended episodes, including our award-winning Why We Riot episode. The band called Fuse for many, many years in New York City ran an artist showcase series. It was called The Lineup. It went on for 10 years. What was great about them is that they're in the spirit of community and the spirit of artistry. They brought artists together, communities together. There was a ukulele player. There was a violinist. You would see rappers. You would see singers. You would see dancers, beatboxers, all in this show. It didn't matter. Like, you can come and you'd find this great blend of music and talent and community, all with the political activist undertone always flowing through. They recently celebrated 10 years of The Lineup Showcase. And there was a tribute that was delivered.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Good evening, my fellow Soul Rockers. 40, or like 10 years ago, our Fuse forefathers and foremothers brought forth upon New York City a new showcase, conceived in community and dedicated to the proposition that all artists are created equal. Now, as we are on the verge of love or war in our cities, a test whether our nation can long endure, we are met here for a great celebration of the band called Fuse, who have given much of their lives that this nation might learn from their example. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. Whether rocking the hallowed ground of the Grizzly Pear or Sidewalk Cafe, these brave men and women who have struggled and thrived in the name of art, for whom busy is their best friend, the world must take note of what they have done and continue to do. It is for us, the Rockers, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they have thus far so nobly carried on. It is for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, to remain devoted to that cause for which the band called Fuse gave the last full measure of devotion for us, that we here highly resolve that these musicians shall not have musicianed in vain, that this nation shall have a new birth of artistic excellence, and that this movement of the Soul Rockers, by the Soul Rockers, for the Soul Rockers, shall not perish from the earth. Thank you. May God bless you, and may God bless the band called Fuse. So please give it up to our good friends, the band called Fuse, our artist spotlight of the week.
That's the most news that's come out of the White House in about 3 weeks.
Actually, well, I have another piece of news that's coming out in our clip of the week.
Can't wait for that.
The future.
All right.
Okay.
So
what do we got?
Yeah.
What are we looking at now? News beating the future is a little bit more serious, but it's looking forward and saying some things that we want to keep an eye on as social justice watchdogs, or things that we are noticing happening in the world that we're going to maybe cover later, should bring to your attention, and you probably won't hear about unless you're probably like right in the mix inside baseball style. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know how I follow up the Manny's Burger Dressed. I do encourage everybody who listens to the podcast to actually find the video because it's quite incredible.
Appreciate you.
No, but now on to serious stuff. So the viewers, our outstanding viewers, if they remember from our first installment, we talked about the decriminalization of drugs, the possession of drugs in Oregon. Well, we have a sort of similar story here. So in Philadelphia, there's a proposal for something called Safe House Injection Site, which is it's a place where people who are struggling with drug addiction can go in and safely, do what they have to do and be under supervision to prevent overdoses and to also provide other care, including some social services treatments. Well, this is being litigated right now. So a couple months ago, the Safe House Injection Site actually won their federal court case to open, and then it was delayed because of the coronavirus pandemic. And the U.S. attorney for Philadelphia in that area filed an appeal to try to quash the the Safe House site yet again. So I just want people to pay attention to this. They had their hearing on November 16th. It's unclear when the Federal Appeals Court is going to issue their ruling, but it's definitely something important to pay attention to because this would be the first such site in the United States. There's already a couple in Canada, and most of the other safe injection sites are in, I think, in Europe. And so just so you have an idea of what the safe injection sites would do, this one would do. They would include on-site medically assisted treatment. So that's the safe injections, recovery counseling, education about substance abuse treatment, and also other medical services. And I do want to just direct you to one. There was a study that showed that these safe injection sites are associated with lower overdose mortality. So obviously that's what they're trying to accomplish here. They're trying to bring down overdoses, and that's hugely important now because there's, I think, 40 states in the country have indicated that overdoses are on the rise since the coronavirus pandemic started. So yet again, more fallout from the coronavirus. But if you can, please pay attention to the safe injection site. Yeah. Pay attention to this federal court case. The ruling could end up going to the Supreme Court, but you don't know what the Biden administration will do if that's what eventually happens. But it's definitely interesting because it would be the first one in the country to operate.
And thank you for that reporting. Like I said, something that if you're not right there in the mix where this is happening, you might not even know is a thing. Not that I didn't know is a thing, because I knew, because I know about the things that are happening, but I didn't just learn about this today. No, that's crazy. Yeah. No, of course, I've been new.
Come on, man, we're teaching you too. But
I appreciate it.
This is all jokes aside. There is a lot of support for this, even though you're going to have a lot of tough on crime folks saying this is going to, lead to more drug use in the country, as if there isn't a lot already.
Yes.
But there was lawyer friends, I don't know how to pronounce this, amicus brief or amicus brief. I always screw it up, but there was one issued in court, and it has
M&M
support
brief
from has support from the American Medical Association, current and former members of law enforcement, even the mayor of Philadelphia. So there's a lot of support for such a injection site.
Got it. All right, interesting case, and probably has some nuance also. Probably has some,
Hey, Manny, I don't know if your mic is on or if I'm just losing internet. Chris, can you hear me?
I could hear you, Rashad. MC, you've been out. Manny, we haven't heard anything. At least I haven't heard anything.
Check. Are we good?
There we go.
Check 1, 2.
Yeah.
Okay, that's weird. All right. It looks fancy, but I fabricated it out of cardboard. So who knows?
Yeah. Look, I moved my entire operation upstairs, so I completely thought I just lost internet, and I was just watching him talk without any sound coming out.
Meanwhile, I was blaming you, but yes, thank you to Silent Night.
The internet to the building went out yesterday, so I was like, "What's going on here?" I don't know.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, thank you. I'm just showing Silent Night's comments. Who's on the job? Thank you, sir. And again, our question of the day was: should the Biden administration eliminate all student debt? And once again, thank you for your comments. If you're listening or watching on the replay, do try to catch us live so we can get your 2 cents in. Sage Levine said, yes, please. So very concise. Michael Doggett, once again, yes, but something needs to be done about the system as a whole. Free public colleges should be a goal. And I think that's a goal for many.
Yeah.
It's certainly becoming true already in some locations around the country. And once again, SBX55 on Twitch. Hey.
Love those bots.
Hey, sup? How was it in Spider-Man? Hey.
It's more like new number, who this?
So that's it. So we will have, again, we ask you to contribute and play along at home. Thanks you to Fenaba Addo, was the last name?
Fenaba Addo, yeah.
Fenaba Addo,
really
who joined
breaking
us,
down the student
professor
loan debt crisis for us.
She was great. It is now time, friends, neighbors, supporters, and haters, for what I called initially when I made the swooshy thing, the quote of the week, but it's turned into the clip of the week. So I may just make it the thing of the week because it could just be a picture of me looking delicious. I have two. I'm not sure if the audience has heard these things, but this one is pretty. In fact, breaking news. I don't know if you guys saw this. This just apparently hit.
My fellow Americans, a short time ago, Joe Biden beat me in the election. And not only did he win, he won by a lot, actually. Therefore, it is time for me to step aside because let's face it, I wasn't probably on my game and I wasn't doing so well. And, I'm the only president in history to lose the popular vote twice and to get impeached. It's time for a change. Greatest dream in the world is that Joe Biden wins because the winner of this vote was decided by a fair and open election. Therefore, I humbly concede to Joe Biden. The American people have responded, and they said to me, "You're fired. Bing, get out."
So there you go. Breaking news. You heard it here first.
Finally.
So last week he went from changing his name to Joe Biden.
Yes.
In a big last-minute bid.
You got to do what you got to do, man. You got to try everything. And now he's
undergoing deep reflection. Wow.
It's very big turn of events. I thought that was important. So you might have seen that. Shouts to Jimmy Fallon, actually. That was from Jimmy Fallon for that. Shouts. A lot of people saw it, but a lot of people maybe haven't. Who knows? Lastly, also, I didn't know which one to choose. So I had two things of the week. You might have also seen that Kanye West, former presidential candidate Kanye West, was on the Joe Rogan podcast. And it was about 3 hours long. And so we're going to play you all 3 hours right now because we're not going to play you 3 hours. We actually found a supercut that breaks down Kanye West's appearance on the Joe Rogan podcast in about a minute. So here were like the key takeaways from this entire interview, which I think many people found fascinating. Say what you will about either one of those two gentlemen. Fascinating individuals. I think fascinating is a good word when you don't want to say anything mean. But here's a quick breakdown of the Kanye West interview on Joe Rogan. Hello, Mr. West.
God, Bob, God, 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 God. God, 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 God. God, 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 M. Night Shyamalan, Gap, God, 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 autistic, God, 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 don't you put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby, God, 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 God. I just said a prayer. God, 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 God. Okay, tell me what I'm saying. God, ding.
There you go. That's it. Things of the week. In case you wanted to get some insight without listening to the whole interview.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. I don't want to put 3 hours of a podcast on my phone. So there you go.
No, now you know. Probably it's worth listening to. You got the. That's it. That's all I got, y'all. Come on. Haven't I done enough? Thank you, gentlemen.
There's probably a more substantial platform than the one from the president of the United States in this election.
That's true.
Just go with God.
There it is. So thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for your time and for your excellence and for your perspectives and for your brilliance and genius in reporting and doing all the things behind the scenes that we do to make this possible. Thank you to watchers and listeners. Again, we're streaming live. We're this grand experiment live every Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern. We will probably be off next Friday for the terrible holiday. But we're all hopefully going to just be home and not doing nothing. Do nothing with yourselves is what I say. That's what I often say.
Less Mannyism in there.
Yeah. So do nothing with yourselves. This Thanksgiving, we'll be taking that week off, and then we'll be back following. Do keep an eye out for the Newsbeat podcast. As we alluded to earlier, we do have a fascinating. No, that was the word I use when I don't like something. So an incredible episode, tremendous. It's going to be great. Everyone loves it. They're already talking about it. Great episode of Newsbeat that will be out in very early December, in conjunction with, we could tell them, right? Anyone who's Color of Change. Big organization doing big things. So we have a collaboration with Color of Change. So we're not small time guys, even though we probably only have 2 Twitch subscribers. We just went on Twitch, so give us a break. Subscribe.
It's gonna take some time. I mean, you get like 15 bots a day. So
50. Hey, listen, bots are some of my best friends are bots. So please join us on Facebook Live 1 p.m. Friday, YouTube Live 1 p.m. Friday, Twitch. Those are our 3 channels. If you're watching this on a replay, please come and join us live. It's a lot of fun. And if you're watching, head over to the podcast, Newsbeat, wherever you find podcasts. And if you're listening on the podcast, come on over and check us out. We're very handsome, and it's really worth your time. So thank you. Any last words, gentlemen?
Happy holidays, or to the thing that you're going to potentially celebrate that must not be named.
That's all right. You could listen. It's a tough time, and it's a tough time this year. It's kind of nutty. So just no matter what you're doing, we wish you well, and we wish you peace, love. All the things had a different sound. Now it sounds like I had to do that. Like I got things, man. I'll do the countdown to the outro the way we count down the intro, and we'll see y'all in 2 weeks. My name is Manny Faces. That's Christopher Swarovski. That's Rashid Mian, and we are Newsbeat, y'all. Peace and love. Thanks to the Maury Creative Studios team that helps us also behind the scenes, and thanks to you all for watching. We really appreciate that you'd spend some time out of your life rocking with us. Hit us up at Newsbeat at MauryCreative.com, or through the internets of all the things, DMs and all that jazz. Twitter, US Newsbeat. Instagram, US Newsbeat. And of course, like I said, Twitch, YouTube, Facebook. We'll be back soon, y'all. Peace.
I am Brother Cornell West.
This is Chris Hedges.
I'm Rosa Clemente.
Hey, what's up? This is Chuck D, Public Enemy Prophets of Rage.
And this is News